Hello to YouTube and the class of Econ 101. Welcome to your basic guide to Brexit. Special thanks to our very good research team down in Tennessee. Shout out to Austin. He's provided us with some very good information to help us wrap our heads around the very complex and very boring topic of Brexit. So without further ado, we are going to have to hop on a plane and fly over to the European Union. Before we begin our delve into the topic of Brexit, I wanted to start off with a very non-funny meme that reads, "Cat, how would you negotiate Brexit? I would repeatedly ask to leave, and when the door eventually opens, just sit there and stare at it." And I feel like this meme is actually kind of accurate with how most people feel about Brexit, or people who have at least heard about it. And especially for us here in the US, a lot of people probably think this isn't really going to affect us, even though the UK and the European Union are big parts of our economy as well. So for the most part, you would probably hear Brexit on the news and just think, that's just a silly title for something, and this has nothing to do with me. Like this cat just gonna sit there and stare at it. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, well, what in the world is Brexit? Well, that's what we are here to tell you about today. For those of you who aren't news junkies, this topic is probably pretty new. It's only been coming up in the news more recently as things have started to get heated. But to start off, Brexit really stands for British exit, which is referring to the UK leaving the European Union. The reason that the UK wants to leave the European Union is because it's such a big country, and the European Union as a whole is extremely large. The UK wants to be able to make economic and legislative decisions on its own and not have to be withholding to the decisions of the UE as a whole. So you can understand that this topic is very controversial. It's caused, in fact, two different prime ministers to step down within the past 3 years. However, this topic, this idea of the British exit, has been around for quite some time. It only came up to vote for the first time in June of 2016, and the results of that caused the British pound to fall to its lowest level as compared to the US dollar in 30 years. The Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, who called for this vote, actually ended up stepping down the next day, and Theresa May, who is also now stepped down, ended up taking his place as the Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister. The hope through all of this is to get a good deal on their exit, but the way that things have been looking so far is they will get no deal and then they will still exit. The main reason that Theresa May ended up leaving office was because she couldn't get enough support behind the leave, which is kind of ironic. If you look at this chart here, this shows the amount of support for Brexit between the different countries contained within the UK. Those countries being England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, with an overall support percentage rate of 51.9%. Diving into more of the economic impact of the Brexit movement, the UK's economy is dependent upon its trading with the EU, so the UK's economy would be better in the long run with some sort of trade deal with the European Union. And of course, because the Brexit deal was more of the UK's idea itself, the UK would overall be most affected by Brexit, while the rest of the European Union would remain mostly unchanged. If you remember back to the chart that was just shown, Northern Ireland had one of the lower percentages, only at 44.2% of support, and that is due to the fact that Northern Ireland does not want a border between them and the rest of Ireland. But this is where a thing called the backstop comes into play, which is a safety net for a harder border. Also, along the topic of Ireland, they would see more issues in their economy if no trade deal was agreed upon. Like I mentioned earlier, you might be thinking to yourself, well, this really won't have an impact on the United States. Well, you'd be wrong. Companies would find it harder and more expensive to move goods between the UK and the rest of Europe with delays, tariffs, and more paperwork. The US dollar could increase in value, making US exports more expensive for buyers in other countries. It also means that stocks and US investments would be more expensive for international buyers. Peter Earle, who is an economist and research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research, says not only could stocks take a hit, but so might bond yields as investors in different entities in other markets jump into government bonds for safety. Now it's time for a short 3-question quiz to see if you were paying attention. I want you to pause the video for as long as you need, and the answers will follow shortly. Here are the answers to the questions. Did you get any of them right? Anyways, thanks for watching, and the credits should be rolling.